Men, what's the most hurtful thing a girl has ever said to you? You are like perfect boyfriend material. I just wish you were better looking. Word for word, after talking to her for a couple weeks. I'm not a good looking man. So imagine my surprise when a beautiful girl approaches me in a crowded bar. This had never happened before. She beckoned me close and said, "Hey, do you mind if I kiss you?" It's a dare. Then looked over at her table of friends in the distance, who were in absolute hysterics. Sure, I mumbled, not out of nerves for once but out of sadness. After I realized that I was just the butt of another joke. I didn't want to kiss her at all, but I'm socially awkward at the best of times, and saying no would have prolonged the situation even longer. No, I didn't enjoy it. As her lips met mine, I could feel tears welling up in my eyes. Her friends were cheering across the crowded bar and my own mates were starting to crack up. I wanted to disappear. Other people say much nastier things to me in public all the time, but this was the most hurtful. It was something about how quickly her words lifted me to cloud 9 and then dropped me back to reality. Edit. Wow, this seems to have struck a chord. Thanks for all the encouragement and for the gold. I should give this incident a bit more context so you know there wasn't a completely unhappy ending. This incident happened about 5 years ago when I was in my mid to late 20s, at a time when I was putting myself out there for the first time since high school. So yeah, it was a setback at the time to realize that some people still act like that, but while unpleasant it certainly wasn't a life-defining moment, and I kept putting myself out there. I'm still socially awkward at times, and I'm still not an attractive man, but I regularly challenge myself in different facets of my life and lots of fantastic opportunities have come out of it. My confidence grows every year and maybe one day that will translate into a romantic relationship. And if it doesn't, then that's not the end of the world. Your son has a new father that loves him. You should just stay out of his life. When I was about 20, one of my best friends came around and was upset that a guy had rejected her and said she wasn't attractive. She was crying and slightly drunk. As I hugged her, she said, "Now I understand what it must feel like to be you." About twice I've gotten, "It isn't your personality or figure. I'm just not into black guys." I'm not mad. People are entitled to their preference. It just sucks that the only thing wrong is something I have no ability to change. Your laugh sounds horrible. Don't ever laugh again. I used to laugh all the time, but when I got told this, it stopped because whenever I laugh I remember those words. I once had a girl I was interested and openly flirting with tell me, "Too bad you aren't as good looking as your brothers." I have self-confidence issues, but being told I was the ugly brother was absolutely brutal to hear. For the record, I have 4 brothers. You bore me. Thought I was having a nice conversation up until that point. I wasn't that bothered by it, but my ex decided she would tell me how big her new boyfriend's dick was, bigger than mine apparently. Charming. Not me, but a girl I know. Read a text she sent to her ex-BF. "You're the most pathetic person I've ever met. It's no wonder your parents don't want to have a relationship with you. You work out at the gym, so people will like you and not talk behind your back, but in reality everyone says how much of a loser you are. You're a balding 30-year-old with a physique that no one could be attracted to and never will. You're hung like a baby, and most of my friends think you're actually gay." A part of me died after reading that. Women know how to uncover a man's deepest insecurities and pulverize their self-esteem. Honestly, I'm not sure I'd ever recover from something like that. God be with you, man. You are an emotionless robot. It only hurts so bad because I feel so damn numb all the time. Nothing. When you make plans or they text you wanting to do something as friends, and then the time comes and they don't show. You put your time into trying to make a get-together work while they completely dissed it. They lost nothing from doing this. In their mind, they did nothing wrong. Their world is still alright. For you though, it's time wasted preparing, telling other friends no, you can't hang out then because you've already got plans. It's a betrayal on all levels. You've lost time in your life, sometimes money if you bought a ticket. Relationship wise, you aren't any better friends with them or anyone else. This goes for everyone, but I've had girls do it to me the most. You're cute and an awesome guy. You're just too short for me. It's happened on more than one occasion, but freak it. Just gives me more time and money to spend on hobbies and doing fun stuff. Dated a girl around a year and had just brought her home to meet my family during winter break. Since my family lives in Hawaii, I stayed behind an extra 2 weeks to spend time at home before the next semester started. 3 days after she got back from her visit, she decided to break up with me over Facebook. Really took me by surprise. This was the first real relationship I had ever had, and the first girl I ever loved. I took it pretty hard. After a pretty rough on me 2 weeks being confused, I gave her a call to set up a time I could pick up a few personal belongings I had left in her apartment. For safety reasons, she had a lock on her door. She told me the last time we spoke in person, I don't know why you are taking this so hard. You shouldn't let someone mean this much to you in your life. Just move on, it's no big deal. You will be fine. Might not seem that bad to some, but that crap will stick with me forever. At the time I felt like I would never get better. Have to say though, it was probably the nicest thing she ever did for me. Got my crap together and worked on myself. Honestly, I couldn't be happier than I'm right now. Sometimes things happen for a reason. I love you, said as I dropped her off at her shitty apartment. Allegedly I could never come in when her roommates were home, since they were hostile and very embarrassing people. So it went for months. Later would turn out it was because she didn't live there. Her other boyfriend lived there. Her apartment was a short walk around the corner from there. Apparently it was too long of a walk, so she would simply have me deliver her to her other man. She would kiss me goodbye, say she loved me, and less than a minute later be wrapped around another guy. This will probably get buried, but I felt I had to share. I had a girlfriend that I lived with for a year before I moved off to college, but we stayed together. We got into a big fight really quickly after that, and she was legitimately trying to make me break up with her. She said every mean thing she could think of, short of one untouchable subject, to get me to say I was done. When we were together, she had been pregnant, but had a miscarriage. During our fight, she said, I'm glad I had that miscarriage. You would have been a terrible father. As someone who had lost a parent at a young age, I have always known that I would do my best to give my kids the world when that time comes, and I was not against the idea of us having kids together. I loved her. When she said that, it cut deep. After proposing to her, getting engaged, spending wonderful months with her, I had to go abroad for 6 months for work. About 3 months in she said, I feel like I made a mistake. I don't feel like I'm that close to you or I love you anymore. By text. The way I felt at the moment was indescribable. A few months later she came back to me to tell me that she actually loves me and wants me as a friend. Hurts terribly when you're still emotionally recovering. A month later she got engaged to another guy who was already source of arguments when I was still with her. My entire life felt like a lie at this point. I felt like the 3 years I spent with her were just a big lie and this guy had probably already been around for a long time. To save me from depression I decided that I wouldn't continue asking me questions about was it actual love or was she with him lying the whole time, and chose to trust her. Still terrible though. A bit of a backstory, but the case has a bit of poetic justice as well. This was in college, and because I tend to have a large vocabulary, the girl that ended up becoming my fiance thought I was from some rich family out in suburbia, as opposed to a scholarship student. Anyways, long story short, she begins to prepare moving into my rent-controlled apartment and disillusionment begins setting in immediately. She sees she's not going to be getting her white picket fence fantasy right off the bat, and all effort into the relationship plummets. She's basically chilling at the apartment online when not in class. I come home from work one day to find she has been playing the town bike in our bed. I tell the dude to get out of my place before I decide to blow his head off and tell the cops he was raping my fiance and begin having it out verbally with the soon-to-be ex. And that's when she dropped the bomb. Well, if you were a real man, you'd be much taller. Freaking schoolboy. Now, my height has never been a sensitive topic to me. I've always found ways to make it work to my advantage. But hearing that come from a woman who had basically been a leech on my resources and time, so she could have fun riding a cock carousel on my dime, was infuriating. But I managed to keep myself under control. Well, To be honest, I'm not a fan of women who slut it up all over town. But at least the slut has control over who she bangs. The good thing about sluts, though you don't ever marry one. She teared up, called me in a hole, and said I had only myself to blame. Ha. I shook my head and went, true, I'm in a hole. But all of this today, that's on you. And this a hole is through with your lying twat. Get your crap and get out. Bonus round. She showed up on my doorstep 6 months later with a baby in tow trying to get a place to stay. She got kicked out of her place she had been staying at because she got caught cheating again. When I told her to GTFO, she looked down at the baby and tried to convince me it could be mine. My response, woman, do you expect me to believe a white woman and an Irishman would form a mulatto baby? Get off my doorstep before I call the cops. Haven't heard from her since. It doesn't count as 6 if you didn't come. It was my first experience and I felt like a champ the next day until she told me that. And it wasn't even my fault. She finished a few seconds in and tossed me a towel afterwards and said to finish myself. I don't know why it crushed my little heart back then. She was my crush since I was 12 though. We still messed around afterwards years later if neither of us had a relationship and needed to blow off steam. But her callous way she said it made me glad we never dated. She would have probably reduced my manhood to sad man being drugged behind his woman with a defeated face. When I was a sophomore in college I had a FWB that started freshman year. We hadn't hung out in a while and she kept texting saying we needed to get together. So we end up planning a study date on a Tuesday or some crap. She comes to my place and we legit study for a bit, then things take a fun turn. We just make out cause she didn't want to jump in where we had left off months before. Anyway, I'm messing with her phone when she receives a text that says, how was a pity date? And I see her previous text calling it just a pity date. I pretend like I didn't see it and she leaves 30 minutes later. When walking her to her car she leans in for a kiss and I turn away saying I think that may be one too many for a pity date. Her face goes to horror and she's speechless. I walk away and she calls out my name like in a crappy movie. Never spoke to her again and now she's fat. On a night out with some friends about 7 years ago, we were outside in the beer garden as it was a very nice day and 2 of my friends were smokers at the time. Anyway, we are outside drinking and having a good time, and when my friends excuse themselves to get more drinks in I overhear a couple of girls chatting on the table next to me. Basically one of the girls was complaining how she had been single for a while now and jokingly said that she was desperate. Her friend says to her again in a joking way something along the lines of you just need to pick one guy here and kiss him. She said, go on then, who would you choose? Her friend points at me and says, what about that guy over there with the long hair? And she goes, oh good god, I'm not that desperate. Okay, it wasn't directly said to me, but it still hurt. The tone in her voice wasn't jokey at all. She was serious. I had a girlfriend scream in my face that I was worthless, would always be worthless, and would never accomplish anything or make anything of myself. It was at the end of an argument, so it didn't come out of nowhere, but it was 20 years ago, and that still stings. After she said that I turned around and walked outside, but it was night. I was a teenager. We were 10 miles from my house, and she was my ride home. I had to swallow my pride and walk back inside. Whenever I think of this story I kick myself for not walking the 10 miles. Dated a girl in college who studied abroad in Europe for a year. After months of planning, texting, Skyping, and organizing a trip through 3 European countries, I flew the 4,000 miles from the US to visit her for 2.5 weeks during my school's winter break. She asked me to visit multiple times, so I left my family, missed Christmas and New Year's, to spend time with a girl I had been dating for a year. On day 2, in a country that I did not speak the language, she told me that she didn't want to date anymore. That was rough and confusing, but it didn't really hit home, because we were sleeping in the same bed at her apartment and acting kind of normal outside of that comment. What hurt was 2 days later during a hike, we ran across another person from her study abroad group and she introduced me. This is my friend from home. I stood there looking like a dumbass, shook the person's hand, said hi, nice to meet you, and then we kept walking. The worst part was this was supposed to be a big romantic trip. We went to Switzerland and Italy, did the whole dinner with a bottle of wine almost every night kind of thing. When I came home, I didn't tell my parents what happened for about 3 months and left out the part about her dumping me when I was there. Told them it happened recently. My parents are really cool and didn't mind me missing the holidays. They weren't thrilled, but were okay with it, and they really liked this girl and thought things were going great. Basically, spent around $2,000 and flew 4,000 miles to visit my girlfriend of a year, missed the holidays with my family to get dumped on day 2 of a 17-day trip. Still not completely over that one. Like and subscribe for more Reddit videos.